Good morning. Welcome, everyone, to Accuracy in America. I am your host, Don Irvine, joined by my co host, Brian McNichol.
Hello, deplorables, dregs, despicables, chumps, Neanderthals, and of course those dog-faced pony soldiers.
And we'll be able to see those dog faced pony soldiers since we don't have to wear a mask
That's
getting on
right.
public transportation. This was interesting. I mean,
Yippee.
this is a Trump judge
Hmm.
that struck this down, and she was in Florida, right? I believe
Right.
that did this, and so that caused some initial confusion because I think United Airlines at first said, well, we're going to keep the mandates in, the mask mandate in, but then the TSA said that they weren't going to enforce them. Metro and Amtrak, I think, here had said that they were going to enforce them, and then an hour or so later said, no, we're not going to. We're going to make that optional. There were viral videos on airplanes of flight attendants telling people and even collecting masks. If people had a disposable mask they wanted to throw away. So there was a pretty fair amount of celebration, I think, overall by people who've been on public transportation, whether or not it's been a airplane, a bus, train,
Uber.
whatever, Uber, right? Uber. Yeah. On the other thing about Uber too is that Uber will now allow people to sit in the front seat as well. They had given that space and everything like that. So yeah, so it's this is great, but there has been a predictable kind of knee-jerk reaction from the liberals on this, hasn't there?
Yeah, it's been pretty funny. I'm going to keep wearing mine, and everybody's like, "Yeah, you can wear four of them for all I care, as long as I don't have to wear one." There were great celebrations on the planes. Of course, the Biden administration went the opposite way. After first saying it wasn't going to fight it, it now says it will fight it. This is a judge. The judge was appointed by Trump after he had lost the election, and she was confirmed just in the final days of the last previous Congress. She was one that the Democrats really tried to block her. She had never tried a case. She had never appeared in court. She was a clerk to an appellate judge, but she had never actually done it herself. And she was, the ABA deemed her unqualified, which I think now is at this point that's kind of a badge of courage, right? If you're a judicial nominee and the ABA says you're not qualified, that pretty much is a signal to Republicans that they should vote for you. So because it's sadly it's like all these other institutions, it's been co-opted by leftists. So she kind of has a story too. It's funny how like when there was the judge, one judge in Texas banning the keep out the Muslims policy under the ban from the 7 Muslim countries under Trump that we couldn't determine like whether the people were terrorists. They were all approving of one federal judge in Texas, thwarting that. But now it's like, what is one federal judge in Florida doing, telling us the whole nation what to do about itself? It's like, well, she's not concerned with health. She's concerned with the law. And the law said that what they did, according to her, was, violated Administrative Procedures Act and was otherwise improperly put into place. So, it's gone for now. They said that I guess the administration has said, we're going to let the CDC guide us on this. And if they say that we still need it, then we'll go to court and try to fight it. But otherwise, we're going to let it go, which is sort of saying, hey, base, we still love you and we'll still look into this. But, I think that the mask mandate is gone for good.
Yeah, I mean, so I've been looking at several different things. I mean, one thing here too is that so when Biden, I guess, was asked, he said, well, individual choice, right? It's like, well, haven't we been asking for that for for a while?
Right. It's amazing how after being beat over the head with what we want and changing their mind and finally deciding they have no choice because, it is the right answer, how they Shazam happen upon the same kind of reasoning we did.
Yeah. So you've got that. And, one of my reactions to this too was that I thought, well, in some ways, this actually could be good for Democrats because the Democrats, this whole mask mandate thing, I think has been, an albatross around their neck. They've been, they tied themselves so much to the CDC and public health and all this stuff. They were stuck with this. the court, I mean, this judge kind of gave the administration, kind of gave the Democrats a little bit of an out because
Right.
it's now a legal ruling. Now you can appeal that ruling, and then, like you said, they may appeal that ruling depending upon what the CDC says. But it gives them a little bit of an out, and you could see that Biden's reaction as well, individual choice, was kind of saying, okay, I think you can kind of say, well, I'm this mandate anyway was going to expire sometime next month.
Yeah,
So,
May 3rd or something.
yeah, so we're not talking about a lot of time here. Maybe it's just all for the good that we just let this go. But obviously, some Democrats are giving him pushback, so they're saying, "Well, if the CDC says this, we got to do this." Now, Chuck Todd is all hot and bothered about it. He says, you're blaming the administration for not being tough and not fighting back on this. But Todd on this is he not reading the polls and seeing how badly? I mean, this is one of those issues. Like I said before, this is one of the issues that's hurting the Democrats. They have got a critical midterm election. And this is an issue that's not going well for them either. It's just they have a litany of things, but this is one of them. Now the part of the problem is that if they do go back and they back the CDC and the CDC says yes, and so they appeal this ruling and they fight this or whatever. Who's got credibility left at this point in time? I mean, and we have mass confusion. I saw that in the Port Authority, what is it, New York and New Jersey, they're saying the airports there, you still have to wear a mask. So they're not abiding by this decision. They are going their own rate. So I'm thinking like, okay, so you fly from LA to New York, and basically airlines are saying you don't have to wear a mask on our plane, but when you get off if you get off at JFK or Newark or whatever, please put your mask back on, right? That's infuriating.
Yeah, well, it's untenable, and you're not going to be able to enforce it.
Yeah,
exactly. You get 70, 80 people get off a plane with no mask on. What exactly the cops going to do? Right? You're going to arrest 80 people who otherwise aren't violating the law just to make a point about masks that no one cares about?
Well, yeah, I mean, right? How are they going to control this? There's not enough personnel they have at the airports to manage this, right? I mean, people, the volume of traffic, in these airports up in the New York, New Jersey area is pretty huge. Yeah, so you cannot police this.
Yeah, you cannot police it, and you should not police it.
Right. You're right.
And it's like, they're very big on trying to find ways to defy for the sake of defying the law, right? Nobody who's out fighting for masks now, right? Not really a whole lot of people.
Yeah, and I think the Washington Post editorial board came out and they were, blasting this, this decision and everything like that, and saying we have to arrest. Look, I think you and we're both fine. Look, if somebody wants, and you kind of alluded to it, if somebody wants to wear a mask or 4 masks, fine. That is their choice. Go ahead and wear a mask if you want to do that. But these other guys, they're trying to make this case. I was CNN. Okay. So CNN plays on the main TV at the gym in the morning. And as I watch it and I look at the the closed captioning, when they're discussing this ruling, it's nothing but people who are blasting the ruling and talking about, this is not good for public health, and they're trying to find people. There's no one on the other side basically saying why we should have this individual freedom, individual right to be able to not have to do this, right?
And where's the proof that masking ever did us any good?
Right. That's the thing. And these people are on there saying, oh, well, the masks are effective. Please show me the scientific evidence where this is really making a difference at this point in time.
That's right.
A lot of this is also using, we have this BA2, variant is spiking with a lot of cases, but we're not getting a lot of hospitalizations. We're not getting a lot of deaths. This is not like the early stages before we had the vaccines and the other things, and people started to try to, kind of figure things out a little bit and stuff like that. So this is not.
I was going to say on this before you leave the point. One of the things that with this in the last couple of weeks is like, you're seeing signs of the country as a whole, and I don't mean every single person, obviously, but you're up to 70-80% of the country now really aren't afraid of COVID anymore, right? They think that if they do get it, they're probably gonna survive, and you might be sick for a couple of days, but it's no longer viewed as worth all these interventions, right? That math has changed in a lot of people's heads just recently.
Yeah, and part of the argument here too, with coming out of these people who are upset about this ruling, is just that, well, that we have all these immunocompromised people and all these kind of things. Well, let them wear the mask if they feel like that. It's like you're going to impose for a small percentage of the population who've got some health issues, you're going to make everybody else wear a mask to protect them. I mean, they, for the most part, until COVID hit, they lived their lives and they didn't take a whole lot of precautions for the most part. They weren't wearing masks before COVID. COVID's got them into this mask thing, and these people probably will never give up the mask, and that's fine. Once again, that's completely up to them. But do not impose this on other people who are perfectly healthy and who are unlikely to pass anything on to you anyway. If you've got a problem, if you've got a problem with this, you find another form of transportation or whatever. It means if you don't want to be there in public transportation, you can find another way to get around this.
Yeah, and you don't have a right to a seat on an airplane.
Right.
I mean, they're pretty clear in straightening that up for you. If you do certain behaviors, right? Oh, you don't have a right to be here. I bought a ticket. Yeah, it don't matter. We're taking you off anyway. So you don't have a right to a seat on the plane, then you don't have a right to insist everybody around you be masked. I guess there's still a ruling in Florida. I don't think anything's happened on it yet, but there was some people there was 3 counties, I think, affected by this ruling, where they say if you have kids who need everyone around them to be masked, then the school system can force them to be masked, right? It's like, that's not the solution, right? And who needs the whole rest of the world masked when you haven't proven that masks do any good? Right? How does that help? How does that intervention help you? Because you haven't proved that. It's not, you don't have that research.
Let me ask you this, because you have parents of a couple of kids, and school age kids and stuff like that. We've kind of gone this past school year from some masking to then the unmasking, and we, a lot of kids are have gotten off of spring break here in Maryland, PG County, Montgomery County, maybe some other places as well. And I think PG and Montgomery County both required the students to have a negative COVID test before returning to school yesterday after spring break. But from your observation standpoint out there in Virginia, though, in terms of how things have gone in school this year, and we're a month and a half or 2 months left to go or whatever in the school year, has there been any big deal about the fact once the kids got unmasked? Did it result in any extra hospitalizations? I don't think we saw anything huge that would have forced the school systems back, right?
No, there's no additional hospitalizations from it. No additional incidents of COVID from it, right? It's just going on doing what it's virus kind of virus, right? We've known that for a long time now. Excuse me. But one thing, my daughter, we were talking about this yesterday. Not all the kids strip the mask off on day one. There's a steady group of kids who don't want to take it off. And I see families in church where the parents are not wearing it, but the kids are. So, we have done something to our kids here. And we need to unwind it and unravel it because, a mask is a choice. And, these people, like we were talking about, these people on planes and so forth, some people may say, okay, I have these other problems that I'm worried about. So, the mask makes me feel a little more secure or whatever, and still wear a mask. But you have kids with, they're under no threat, right? You're in a school, you catch it, you're not going to get much viral load. You're still below 1,000 kids, 18 and under, dying in the whole pandemic, right? We're still below that in the United States. So if we, I don't really know what to, I don't know what you're going to do for those people, right? So I don't know.
Yeah, I notice something similar at church as well for me. In terms of, there are still some members of the congregation that are wearing masks, tend to be the older people, but we have a couple of families where they're, even with young kids, they're entirely masked. I haven't seen it where the parents are unmasked and the kids are masked. But,
but 3 or 4 of those in mass the other day.
That just seems so odd.
Yeah, my kids are like,
Yeah, and I believe, I mean, we've had. I think that I don't think the kids are necessarily required to wear them in their other kids' classes or whatever, and stuff like that. Once again, we haven't seen like a big outbreak. We haven't seen additional hospitalizations for this. It's like, so okay, you want you and your kids to wear a mask. That's fine, but the chances that you're going to catch anything is really, really slim because we've been basically unmasked in church for a while now, and there have been like no reported cases.
Yeah, right.
So can you not take that as kind of the evidence that things are actually okay? But hey, to each their own. I'm not going to berate them, but I do find I still do.
Although they will berate us, right?
Oh yeah, oh sure, yeah. Sure. I mean, that's for sure. I mean, the people that'll still really make me, scratch my head are the people when you drive and you see them wearing a mask, but they might have the window down. It's like, what do you need there? I was even thinking about the mask, when they've had this on the metro for, and I thought, how much do we really need this on a bus or train like metro in city transportation? I understand you got a lot of people together, but on the other hand, the doors are opening and closing about every 3 or 5 minutes, right?
Yeah, the air is changing.
There's an air exchange. There's an air exchange.
Airplanes, the best air handling you'll ever see, right?
Yeah. So it's like, is that really necessary? I mean, because every metro rail stop is no longer than about, on the average, no longer than about 3 minutes apart, right? So you have the doors opening roughly every 3 minutes, maybe 5 on a slightly longer beach station to station. And a lot of those stations are outside on top of that. So you even have, outdoor air coming through, and stuff like that. So I'm like, yeah, buses, people are getting on and off buses all the time, the inner city buses. I was like, no, this is, to me, I'll grant them a little bit this being in the tin can, but they have said that those are the best air filters you can get or on an airplane, right, and everything. So I think hopefully we've gone past this. But, the Biden administration fights this, and then the court, this ruling gets reversed. And then you got to go back to doing this. But how many people are really going to go back to doing this at this point in time? Aren't people like fed up with this? Like, no,
right.
I'm not going
to do it. You
to
have to think about a whole new public persuasion effort if you're going to start reinstitute this stuff, because people have, they've turned off on the regulations, right? They're like, okay, we did all this stuff. It didn't really help, right? So now you want us to do it all again, and you get no more evidence that it helps than you had before. No. No is what's coming.
Yeah. I mean, I think there are going to be a lot of people that are going to say, like, okay, well, show me the evidence on a public health basis that proves that this is effective to do.
All right.
And maybe I'll go ahead and do this. But I think now that, really,
we have a little too much information to go along with this garbage anymore, right?
Yeah.
When we first started, and we've talked about this before, no one knew what was up, right? No one knew how dangerous this was and how many people would die and, how contagious and how deadly. Okay. But now we do know. And so you're not going to be able to do things to us that were predicated on us not knowing. Okay. So, the whole matrix changes of what you can do and what's available to policymakers, and they're, the Biden administration, every way they can, every place they can, it's like, we're backing off this, but we have the right to snap it back on, right? And it's like, no, we'll see about all that, because we're ready to fight it now. And at some point, you're going to have to prove the efficacy of your methods, right? You can't just tell people they have to wear a mask. You have to have some showing that it works, that it'll help them to wear a mask, right? So, and they're not prepared to do that, and they know they're not prepared to do that. So, that's the point where they have to fold.
Yeah,
we're not really there yet. We're close, but we're not really there yet.
Yeah. So it's now I almost can't wait to get back on a plane just to experience the freedom again.
I hear you. If I don't have to fly, I'm not going to fly.
Yeah, I mean,
some of these places I want to go, you got to fly. But
yeah. I have to admit, I mean, as someone who spent a lot of time traveling for, I don't know, almost 30 years, I was on planes a lot. And then have not been on a plane anywhere near as much in the last 5 years. Getting on a plane now, it's like I don't have a huge desire to do it. And because of fuel prices and have put and other issues, the pandemic, the other issues, decisions by the administration, we now have airfares that are being pushed up. So my wife was trying to go back and visit her mom again, and it's been a little bit of a struggle because she was checking. Southwest has usually been a good place to go. It usually has direct flights to Salt Lake. Flights are not as cheap as they used to be, even on Southwest. But she was checking. I mean, and I guess it's because she was going in less than 30 days. But it was like $600, and she just like choked, and like
Wow.
$400, maybe 450 is kind of the limit for that. $600, and you're like, I don't know if I can do this. But
Right.
this is what's happening, and I'm reading stories where people are like, yeah, I bought a $700 ticket. I found a real cheap ticket with a layover, but and I wouldn't normally go. But my sister's got cancer, but but otherwise I would have had to pay $1,700 to fly from like Florida to New York or wherever it was. It's just that's another thing that's happening, and the airlines are struggling with personnel and the flight schedules and lots of other issues. And I'm like, man, I think I'm going to hold off traveling as long as I can, because right now it looks like there's still some issues that are going to make flying unpleasant. I mean, it was
Right.
unpleasant enough with the mask. I'm glad we don't have to wear a mask, but there are other issues. I mean, you don't know how long you're going to be stuck on a plane. I mean,
Right. See, that's it. I'm claustrophobic. And
yeah.
I read these things all the time. We were sitting on the runway for 4 hours. I
Oh.
would be killing people. Right. I would have murder charges against me if I had to sit on a plane for 4 hours.
I mean,
Right.
I mean,
I ain't built for that. I can't take that risk.
yeah. I mean, I'm used to taking, I've taken lots of direct flights from, here to Utah and some other places, where it's 4.5 hours and things like that. That's manageable. That most time you're taking like a 2.5 hour flight, taking another, having a layover and then catching another flight onto your destination or whatever. What's worse is being stuck and not going anywhere, whether or not it's just you have to sit on the tarmac because you can't take off, or you're sitting on the tarmac and you've landed, but you
Yeah.
can't get off the plane because they, of all
It's
the
even worse.
Oh, I hate that. That makes me more antsy than anything else, is that delay. I mean, please, if I get in the air, I can deal with it. But just being on the ground and not knowing when I'm going to get off that stinking plane bothers the heck out of me.
Yeah, I hear you.
So, and then I think that also agitates other people. So things, everything escalates when
Right.
people are just sitting in that space, knowing that we're not going anywhere and when are we going to get off?
Yeah.
And stuff. So it's pretty bad. All right. The war, day 56, amazing. Day 56.
They're hanging on over there, man.
They are. I mean, the Russians have stepped up their attacks on the east. They're really making
Right.
a big
They've sort of
push.
abandoned doing much more than the East.
Right.
Right. So they're going to throw it all at the East and try to cleave off the Donbass region, and because that's historically it's weird how they can just decide what is historically Russian and rightfully theirs, right? With no input from anyone, they just boing, there's your decision. So he's going to keep at it. We are rushing armaments over there and so forth to help them fight it off. We can at least, and I think it is in the interest of the West to make it as difficult as possible. Make Putin, he probably will win, right, eventually at this small down goal, but make it costly, make it hurt him at home, make it take a long time, make him spend a lot of money on it, make him lose a lot of equipment over. They lost a battleship the other day. I think it was a nuclear ship too. So
maybe so.
Something wacky stuff at the bottom of the ocean now. So I think it's something to think about. It's something to work on. And we should not take our foot off the pedal on the Russians.
Yeah, not at all. I mean, I think the Wall Street Journal had an editorial the other day. They're just saying that that Putin has given a big gift to NATO with this, because you're going to see nations joining NATO.
Yeah, screaming, racing to NATO's arms, right?
Right.
All over your border. You had Poland sort of nearby. Now you have, all every direction on the western front of your country is going to be NATO country.
Yeah, so I didn't realize, I mean, I have mentioned about how I'm just really impressed and amazed by the resilience of the Ukrainians and how they've been able to fight back on this, considering how outmanned and outgunned they are, with just raw numbers. But then I was reading an article about how well trained the military was because of the US and NATO had been training these guys. So, and then, Russian troops are not trained like that. They're,
That's right.
they're just
A
now
lot
they're
of
just
them
not trained.
conscripts with very brief training periods. I mean,
Right.
they don't really know much at all.
Yeah. So as a result, in terms of that gives the Ukrainians, despite their number disadvantage, that gives them a distinct advantage tactically because these guys, know a lot more about how to fight, where to fight, how to deal with things, and so they can push back on things that happen, much more so. So that is great. I mean, I think that so that gives me even a more additional hope that even as Russia intensifies their fighting, that Ukrainians definitely have a high resolve on this. Is like, no, we're not giving up. I mean, Putin keeps throwing out these deadlines. You must surrender by, otherwise, what this.
Yeah.
Uh,
Otherwise, what, dude?
yeah,
You
yeah. I mean,
told Kiev it had to surrender, and it didn't surrender, and it's still in their hands.
yeah. I
You
mean, I,
backed
I
off.
get. I mean, I guess he could go and try to flatten some other structures, potentially where some civilians are, and he could kill some more civilians. That
And we'd still have, a third of the right wing saying, "Yeah, they deserved it."
yeah,
I mean, we're really, I think about some of these people, and some of them were like dedicated freedom fighters, right? Who have just completely just sucked down this Russian propaganda and just mouth it right out because, A, they don't believe our media, and B, there's this, if Biden's for it, I'm against it, right? Well, Biden happens to be for the right thing here.
yeah. And
He's at least picked the right side on this.
Yeah, yeah. You can't be just so black and white on the president in this particular case. He's doing in general, he's doing the right thing. I mean, he's backing the right side. We're sending military aid to the right side of this equation.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so, yeah, but the idea that it's just this decision about anything that Biden does, I'm against. You can't do that. I mean,
you can't think like that. That's
you
not the
can't
way
do that.
this
You
goes.
can't do that with any president. The Democrats shouldn't be saying that about a Republican president, and the Republicans shouldn't be saying that just abjectly about a Democrat president. It doesn't really work that way.
That's
and,
right.
And particularly in the foreign affairs section, when we're getting into a war situation like this, this is the United States. The United States needs to be unified, and you've got these people that we talked about this before. It's like those are head scratchers. It's like I don't understand what these people are thinking. It's like how much more loss of innocent civilian life in Ukraine do we have to have to convince you exactly what
they're like, oh, they're the faults of Ukraine. They have this Azov brigade. They have this history of whatever. They were minding their own business, right?
Yeah.
We were not doing anything to provoke Russia, and they were not doing anything to provoke Russia, and yet they got attacked by Russia. Oh, and somebody told me the other day, oh, they're making noise. And like, you don't get to bomb another country because they're making noise, right? And Russia doesn't get to choose Ukraine's allies. I mean, it's a sovereign country. Either we're Westphalian and we protect sovereignty like the UN says, or we don't.
Yeah, it's there are people. Yeah, those arguments. I mean, it's just kind of like if you had
can't
to have
fight for Ukraine now, how could you fight for Kuwait before? Right? It's the same thing. What's the difference between Kuwait and Ukraine?
Yeah, no, I mean right. I mean, the thing is that I think that you could run off a list of things of places we've gone into and done things. This is not like no one was saying that Ukraine was pure and lily white or whatever and completely innocent. Okay, but
it doesn't matter.
Yeah, but this case is that they were as you said, they were just kind of sitting around minding their own business. They were doing their own thing, and all of this, and and Russia came over the border and attacked, and they,
Right.
with force, and so yeah, I mean, our reaction should be, we're going to defend these guys because that was they weren't, they didn't provoke Russia, they didn't poke the bear.
Right, because if you don't fight them there, where are you going to fight them?
Yeah.
Right. What Russia decides to do this again? How many do you say, okay, well, it's not our business? They take Mexico. Is it still none of our business? Right. They work their way around the world. Who does? Right.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a lot of that. There's a never-ending cycle to this if you let that happen.
Somebody told me the other day, well, you're talking about like the domino theory. And I'm like, you know what? Domino theory was not wrong. Right. What was wrong with the domino theory? That's exactly what was happening. Right. I mean, when they were getting to these things, they were going around the world, they were finding vulnerable places and trying to make communist outposts out of them. Right. And they were, it wasn't just the Koreas and Vietnams and Angola, Eastern Europe, all over the world. They were trying to stake their claim to them. It was worth fighting over.
So, out of curiosity, I mean, if Russia succeeds in basically, taking over the eastern part there, the Donbas region and things like that, do you see the Ukrainians, willingly going along with that? Are they going to fight on that, or are they eventually going to come to an agreement of saying like, okay, look, you got to leave at this point in time. You take one step over that part, and that's it. I mean, and then NATO maybe steps in big time and does things, but. Would they ever acquiesce? I tend to think that the Ukrainians they seem to be dug in right now.
Yeah, I don't think they're good. I don't think they're going to give it up. I think they're going to fight to the last man. I mean, you look on the wire, that's what's happening. They're saying, this may be the last new message I ever send because, they're closing in on us, but we're fighting until this is done. So, I wouldn't put it past them. I don't know that Russia will succeed. The assumption now is they will, but I'm not sure of it.
Yeah, it's really hard to predict. I mean, they are, like I said, they are stepping up things and trying to show some military might. But
they put some new commanders,
Yeah.
They got rid of their McClellans.
Well, we shall see if that works. All right, we'll switch over to some election stuff, et cetera, et cetera. Elizabeth Warren, I guess she wrote an op-ed, and she's a little concerned about the Democrats and that they're not pushing their programs hard enough. They're not talking about things, and that if they don't really kind of shine the light on some of the good things, the Democrats are going to have a very bad November. What do you think?
Her point is, I guess, that you're not passing the big initiatives that the Democrats want passed, right? But those are not the initiatives the country wants passed. So if you pass them, I don't think I don't think like a big green energy bill right now gets you very far. I don't think, she's saying straighten out the budget, the spending and so forth. And yeah, that's true. That would probably, if you could claim physical rectitude, sobriety, whatever, that might be something that helps them now. But this morning, Larry Sabato put out an email after having made some sharply anti-Republican comments yesterday. Today he comes out with an email that says he's moving 11 House races all toward the Republicans. So all over the country, some of them are just, likely Democrat to leans Democrat, right? There's still districts that'll be hard to win, but they're vulnerable in even their most seemingly safe areas. So you're looking at, I think that the last couple of weeks there's been a round of polling, internal polling, so forth, made available to Capitol Hill people that the Democrats now realize that they're in trouble, historic trouble, 60, 70 seats this could be, and the Senate as well, right? Right now it doesn't look like the Senate can, the Democrats can hold the Senate. You see Mark Kelly, coming out saying a bunch of Republican stuff to try to save his job in Arizona, right? I don't know what chance he has. I keep reading these things, Eric Erickson, he's down in Atlanta, and he's like, Herschel Walker's a total idiot. He's completely unprepared. He's 6 points ahead of Warnock, right? So, we could be having as I told somebody the other day, that congressional baseball game is going to be lit if Herschel Walker gets in. He will be stealing some bases. He will not be throwing him out.
Yeah. I'm not sure about how Herschel Walker will be as a politician, but he's got the Trump backing. He's got big name recognition in Georgia, obviously. Would it be the first time that something like this has happened? Absolutely not. People like this people do get elected like that. So yeah, we'll have to wait and see. And and Georgia's still definitely a hotbed of things going on there. I mean, they've got a gubernatorial primary, and I guess it's Perdue versus Kemp, but I think Kemp is comfortably ahead. Yeah. So I don't think there's any danger there. Though I did hear that the Secretary of State.
You also notice Trump has cooled the anti-Kemp rhetoric. It's like shh about Kemp. Go ahead.
Is that after he realized that Kemp was probably going to win and that Perdue was just not the candidate, right. type of thing. But
Trump said while we're there though, he's made some pretty questionable endorsements lately. Dr. Oz in Pennsylvania, that guy's not a conservative. Yeah. What was the other one? There was a couple more that were just really bad. And like Robbie Starbuck's race in Tennessee, he picked some, complete rhino in that one. They had to take this woman off the ballot, and she's Tennessee too, right? Tennessee 5. Yeah. They had to take her off the ballot because she hadn't lived in the district long enough or something. So, there is some in Tennessee. The Tennessee GOP is there's some anti-Trump people in there who are making some waves now, which, the only way you can lose in Tennessee is to be anti-Trump. That's the only mistake you can make.
Yeah, so we'll have to wait and see. I mean, it's it'll be interesting to see, in terms of people that Trump is backing in this election, because he's not the president. How much weight does his endorsement carry? And what happens if a lot of the Trump, back candidates lose? Does that take the luster off the Trump endorsement? Does that finally move the party away a little bit from the Trump train? There's a lot of factors involved. I mean, I have no idea in the end how those candidates will do, but yeah, I mean, sometimes you do kind of like, why did he pick that person?
Yeah. Right. And he used to be, he got all his advice on that from Mitch, right? Yeah. Him and Mitch worked hand in glove, and sometimes that led him, like Luther Strange in Alabama. We gave Doug Jones a Senate seat by being an idiot about Alabama, right? Yeah. So, it's hard to tell like who, which one's going to go sideways on it, but it looks like, whoever's advising him on it now does not really understand Trump world and like what people are looking for in these candidates.
Is it just me, or is it the Republicans that have a tendency to pick some really bad candidates more so than the Democrats do?
Yeah, I think so. I think, I mean, I'd have to look at their side and think about it, but we do definitely land on some people who can't win, and we didn't have to do that to ourselves, but we do it. So, and it's like, Ronald Reagan said, I worked for Tom Davis, and we used to hear that all the time. He's not very Republican. Everybody, he's rhino, this and that and the other. Tom Davis did what he had to do to win his elections, and he was a reliable Republican vote and a reliable sort of, deputy whip of Republican support in the House, right? Support for Republican legislation in the House, and while everybody else laughed off Terry Schiavo, Tom Davis took it seriously. So, he was a lot more conservative than he gets credit for. And, you have to understand that, like, all these guys are trying to win different. They're not all trying to win the same election. And to some extent, it's, and thank goodness for this cycle, the elections have been nationalized. So the issues are the same, and people don't really know who these guys are anymore. But, you still have to make your case in your district. You see, that's part of the thing. Like, Mark Kelly cannot be for, Title 42 reform because, that's Arizona, and that's all the people are pouring into Arizona. That's his people. So he can't be for that what Chuck Schumer is, right?
Right. I mean, I want to go on to Title 42 here in a second, but I did want to go back to the Tennessee thing, on because Megan Ortegas, I mean, she was a State Department spokesperson for during the Trump administration.
Mm-hmm.
I know she appeared on, I think for sure she appeared on Fox News quite a bit during the Trump years as well. Um, but in a case like this where the Tennessee GOP came in there and they removed her, and they removed another guy who hadn't voted in like 4 years and things like this. I mean,
They removed a few, and they removed Robbie Starbuck, who I guess he kind of moved back to the district to run.
yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, I think his was one of the more questionable ones because apparently he had lived in a district long enough. I think he met the residence requirement, so it wasn't really clear why he was removed. But in the case of like Ortegas, I mean, you think that she thought that requirement was really not going to be enforced and that she'd stay on the ballot? I mean,
well, here's the thing. One of the things in that story about it, they said, well, the common practice here is that if these objections are raised, people vouch for you. Someone comes out, your friends come out and say, hey, we should exempt this person from the rules because they're a good candidate for, reasons X, Y, and Z. Apparently that did not happen for Ortegas.
yeah,
So,
well, I mean,
Robbie Starbuck. So I don't, I think the part of this is like, the power in these races is not the GOP establishment designated candidates, right? Other people are getting those roles or creating that momentum. And so this is a way for the party poobahs to reassert control. It's fairly common, apparently, in Tennessee to knock people off the ballot like this. So, I guess they know what they're doing.
yeah, I mean, she specifically moved there so she could run, right?
Yeah.
So, and everything like this. I mean,
And then she moved, I guess. So I think part of her problem was where she bought her house was, when they redistrict, she was put into another district. She's not far out of the district, but she had to move again to get back in the district. She didn't move till March, I think.
yeah, and it's not uncommon for politicians to move to a place to run for a place. I mean, we actually have that here, and we had that here in Maryland. I mean, we had Alex Mooney who lost his state Senate election. What was that? 2010. That was the year I was running, and so he then later went ahead and packed up his bags, moved across the border into West Virginia, and ran for Congress and won.
Yeah, that's right.
That actually made some Republicans here a little bit upset about that. About doing that, but now Mooney's in a battle to try to retain it because West Virginia is losing a seat, and he's now running up against an incumbent. And I don't know how that race is going at all at this point, whether or not he will be a member of Congress come November after the election or not. But I guess he's got a primary to face in order to get there. So it happens. I mean, in Hillary Clinton, Republicans accused her of being a carpetbagger when she ran in New York. So
yeah,
it'll happen. Okay, so Title 42. Yeah, so you've been mentioning this. So we have this Title 42 thing, which is Biden is basically saying we're not going to go with this, but we're going to reverse this. So Kelly has come in and said he wants to keep it in place. Who was us? Masto, Warnock, who you just
9 of them. Now
it's up to so 9 and it's growing. The list is growing. Is Biden still going to go ahead and do this, or the Democrats? Is this little revolt? Is he going to think twice, or is he just going to say no? I'm going to do what I said I'm going to do, and if you lose your election, tough.
Well, I mean, I think that he has been on the side of the extremists and every immigration debate so far. So Title 42, for those of you who don't geek out on this stuff, is enacted during the Trump administration during the height of COVID, saying, if you are coming to this country, you have to wait outside the country for your asylum hearing, in the interest of not having people who bringing in COVID to the country. Well, now that COVID is subsiding as a problem, the Biden administration, they're fighting the mask mandate on the planes. But, if there's a way to get more illegals into the country, they're willing to jump at that too. And that's what's going on here. They're trying to make it easier for illegal people to get in the country and who cannot get asylum, aren't eligible for asylum, And then you get in the country and you just get lost and you don't ever come to your asylum hearing and you're just in the country. So, that was the, catch and release, we tried to stop. We called ourselves stopping. So, I don't know how this will come out, but I do think that, the more that Democrats do to not enforce the border, the better it is for Republicans, right? I think that the country has squarely come down on, we don't want chaos at the border. We don't want millions of people pouring over the border. It's not keep every single person out, but it's like, we got to get a handle on this, right? And we had a handle on it. There's a sense that we had it under control and let it get out of under control by caving to, the immigration extremists on the left that have had the ear of the Biden administration.
So I'm thinking, as you're talking about this too, is just Biden seems to be the first president. I don't know, maybe he's not, but it just seems in my mind is that first president I can remember that's really been beholden to another wing. I mean, he really vacillates a lot. I mean, he tries to do this, and then, but he worries about the left flank. So then he does a bunch of stuff to appease them or whatever. I mean, have we really seen a president from either party really behave like this, or the way Biden has towards any particular flank?
I was reading on Twitter the other day. Someone said, Biden is the most consequential progressive president of our lifetime. And at first I'm like, well, I mean, consequential in the terms that he's wrecking the country, more rapidly than any president in recent memory. Yeah. But he is the most progressive president in our lifetime, right? He really believes all this stuff. He really thinks, we should have open borders and high taxes and socialism and government control of healthcare. Believe me, they would go for that if they thought they could get it, right? He really does want to shut off all domestic energy production. He's serious about it. He would like no more oil and gas, right? So, I don't think he understands the implications of what he's asking for. I think that's, that's true of a lot of leftists, but especially of him. And so, his thing is just to take the most progressive position in the room.
Yeah, I mean, but do you think the majority of the Democrats who voted for him were hoping for?
No, he's to the left of his party.
Yeah,
I think that's part of the. You're starting to see this with the parents' rights stuff and immigration and all this stuff. That you have 9 Democrat senators opposing him on that. He's to the left of the people who have to win elections in his party. So they have their own thing, which makes it especially amusing that he. I guess he told Obama that he plans to run for president again. I can only imagine the look on Obama's face when he said that. Yeah, great, Joe.
Yeah, Joe, we really need to talk about this.
I mean, are you sure?
Yeah, it's like, actually in 2024, the Democrats need a brand new team because your team is not working.
Because you've done so much. It's time to let others lead.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they're losing, a lot of ground on the Hispanic vote too, right? I mean,
yeah,
this is not going well on really any front for them.
Yeah, it turns out that Hispanic voters are on Republican side of the immigration issue.
Yeah,
right. We always thought, George Ramos saying every 5 minutes, they're wrecking our society with these immigration laws, that they were all leftists and wanted to sneak all these people in the country. If you're voting in the United States is because you're a citizen, right? So you've become a citizen. So you've done the hard work of, getting here legally and going through the process and passing the test. You don't let other people get it for free, sneak in and get everything you have for free. They're not for that. And I remember, Steve Pierce from New Mexico, right? He was one of the biggest immigration hawks in Congress, and he's running in a border district of New Mexico and killing people, right? Just absolutely, winning 30, 40 points over Democrats. I always thought about that at the time, like, how do they do that? And, his press secretary was a friend of mine, and he's like, the issue that everybody thinks the left likes, it's actually the right. They actually like it, the right view.
Yeah, so I mean, it's been an interesting thing to watch how the Hispanic, how that's all evolved on that issue.
Yeah.
I think I do think part of that too is that they're seeing the issue and how it affects them a little bit more. It not quite so much black and white of like, oh, we should have the right to come to this country, America as an open country. I mean, the people are flooding in to such an extent that I think even Hispanics are saying, wait a minute. It's like, what are you doing here? I think, didn't they report they had like 211,000 border crossings or some apprehensions encounters in March? I mean, they had this.
Right. Okay. So let's talk about that for a minute. So 240,000 a month, right? That's what they're getting right now, right? Isn't that right?
211 is the last.
211. I'm sorry. 211. I'm sorry. 211. So round it off. Say 210,000. Okay. So over a year, 21 times 12 is 252. So you're talking about 25 million people, right? Am I doing that right? 2.5 million. 2.5 million. 2.5 million. Okay. So we've been told for years that there are 11 million illegals in the country, right? That's the number. That number's been out there for 20 years.
Right.
What do you think that number really is, right? Because they're letting in 2.5 million a year, right? It ain't 11 million, right? They're not dying that fast, right? So, so what is that number? And what are we doing about that? I mean, that's a huge expense on the United States, right? And the various states within it. So how are we handling that? And what's, and where are we willing to let that number go? Right.
Right. Exactly. We'll kind of finish off so news out of Shanghai is that they're letting some people out of the lockdown. I guess they feel that they've controlled COVID or something like that at this point in time. I don't know. I mean, it's we've talked about this before. I mean, this was an extremely severe lockdown. People couldn't do diddly squat. And the effect it has is on the world economy, because we talked about globalization. China's a part of the global economy, and shutting down factories and everything like that affects other countries as well. Everything talked about interconnectedness. So, is China finally are they going to try to ease up and try to get things up and running? Are they just, is this still going to be a longer process before we see this opening up a little more?
Well, I mean, China, we've talked about this before. China is run by engineers. We're run by lawyers. They're run by engineers. So, that when they look at a problem like COVID, they're like, okay, if we isolate everyone, they won't be able to give it to each other. It's pretty simple math. Just make everyone stay home. Okay. All right. But if you make everyone stay home, people go nuts, right? The human cost of that is intolerable, right? Democrats wanted to do that here. They wanted the United States to be like that, right? Don't ever forget, they would have done this to us if they thought they could get away with it for 5 minutes, right? But it turns out, and this is something that like softer intelligence, not necessarily hard data people would understand, is like the craziness you're inflicting on people by making them stay in their house for months on end. So, the damage to their mental health and so forth. So now, they're starting to see that. Those videos they're all around the world, and the PRC, People's Republic government has to be looking at that and saying, that's a powder keg that we may not be able to handle. I mean, you could crush them and kill 50 million people, but at what point, does the rest of the population say enough, right? I mean, you're kind of bordering on it when you're locking up 11 million people for no reason.
That's right. All right. We are out of show. So the last word.
Last word. Well, you have a thing on here. Virginians get their gas tax holiday. I don't know what they will get. Louise Lucas, the state senator from Portsmouth, is making sport of trying to thwart as many Youngkin initiatives if she can. If she does not, if she's able to block a gas tax relief when even like the communists in your state had it, I think that's I don't think that's going to hurt Youngkin. I think it's going to hurt her. I think, that's one that's pretty easy to say. The voters clearly wanted something done here, and you clearly stood in the way.
Yeah, here. So how I feel about this gas tax thing. It's a political thing. It's very gimmicky. It really doesn't. It really doesn't do anything. I actually like the potential better. I mean, if you're going to have to do something, I prefer the other proposal, which is like to give everybody like $50 for every car they have registered or whatever the amount is, send them out and give it to all, and then at least it's the drivers in Virginia, okay? Because part of the thing about the gas tax holiday is that in Maryland, it doesn't prevent anybody from coming across the border in West Virginia or Virginia, Delaware, whatever, coming down from Pennsylvania. They think, oh, I'm close enough to a gas station here. I'll drive 20 miles to save 36 cents a gallon because I got a big SUV or truck or whatever. I'll load that up. So the gas tax holiday in Maryland just didn't benefit Marylanders. It benefited anybody who wanted to come to Maryland and get gas. But if you want to benefit Virginians, and you're not going to go to the income tax, property tax business, cuts, which is what I think is more effective, then at least this to me is better than doing the gas tax holiday. Give the car owners something for every car that's registered they owned in their name or something like that. I could live with that. I mean, that would have been better for me.
Yeah, I can see that. Also, I guess Kaepernick is throwing for some NFL teams again. Good luck if you can make it. But here's the thing about it. Here's the thing people need to understand of that. If he was good enough to start at quarterback for an NFL team, he would have been starting at quarterback for the NFL team. They don't care about that, what activism he's involved in if he could make a team win. So he's auditioning, and I think he understands that, and I think that he would acknowledge this in an honest moment for a backup role. Okay, backup quarterback is like backup catcher. You can work, you can make a lot of money doing basically nothing for years, as long as you don't make any trouble, right? But there's no reason to accept trouble off a backup quarterback or backup catcher, right? You just get someone else because, there's a lot of them out there who are capable of being backups and carrying a clipboard and not, running the scout team offense during the week or whatever. So, if he's good enough to be a second team, if he's only good enough to be a second team, people are not going to put up with the circus that would come from signing him, right? You'd have media at camp, everybody there to talk to the same player every day, who's not even a player, who's a big part of your team, right? While the other players are ignored and so forth. That creates more problems than it's worth. And so if he wants a job, then he needs to, that's how it's going to have to be. He's going to have to assure someone that, there'll be media crush at the first, but then I'm going to put my head down and play football.
Is he so determined to play in the NFL? That's why he didn't try to play in like the CFL or even sign up with an USFL team just to show that he can play. I mean, Johnny Manziel went to the CFL and he was terrible.
Yeah, well, Johnny Manziel had a serious drinking problem.
Yeah,
a very serious drinking problem. It was a sad situation because he really had a good football brain. Could have been a great player.
Yeah, I mean, Kaepernick. The problem for the NFL now too is that it's been what, 5 years?
Yeah.
It's the time has passed, but if he wants to try to keep his dream alive, fine. I mean, there's no obligation on the part of the NFL, to sign him to anything. Right. I think they've definitely been trying to move on, and every year you get new college talent, and he just gets older, and you still get good talent coming out of college. It's like, what do you need this guy for? And
all the troubles he brings.
Right. All right, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed it. Please, as always, stay safe, stay well. Remember, we live in the greatest country in the world. Do not let anyone tell you otherwise. And as always, God bless America. And we will see you again next week.